committee recommended Dr. Cheryl James Hoffman, who's here on my left, as the Hetherington Award winner. I was the lead nominator, but there were several people who co-nominated Cheryl for this award. And those people are, and they don't need to stand because you all know these people, especially one of them. Jane Clark, Scott Kretschmar, Dave Perrin, Juanine Sperduso, Tom Templin, and Pope Francis. all of these people booked package to come to Philadelphia for this award. So I'm the one that's going to give a little rundown about Cheryl's career and why he deserves this award. He began his kinesiology travels in 1961 as an elementary physical education teacher in White Plains, New York. Shortly thereafter, he moonlighted as an assistant basketball coach at Westchester Community College and began his graduate program. I understand that Cheryl originally wanted to go to NYU for graduate school, but it was too far of a commute from his job as a teacher and a coach. So he settled for a more neighborhood school. So after receiving his master's degree from Teachers College at Columbia University, Cheryl changed jobs and became an assistant professor and the head basketball coach at his alma mater, King's College in New York. He continued working with this neighborhood school to get his doctorate degree, and when he finished, he joined the faculty at the University of Pittsburgh. While he was there, he used his new skills in motor control and learning and biomechanics and qualitative analysis to aimed at improving the clinical diagnosis of skill performances. This was an area that in his working with the real world as a coach and an education PE teacher, realized there were big gaps in working with this. So he and his students solved all those issues. In 1985, he moved to become department chair at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. He did this, he led the department there for 10 years and ultimately stayed there until his retirement in 2006. But it was a very active retirement, as I'm going to tell you. When in around 1985 or so, he began to shift his scholarly interest to the areas of the philosophical and ethical and sociological aspects of sport. His single-authored book that was published in 2010 by Baylor University Press, Good Game, Christianity and the Culture of Sports, is widely acknowledged by academic religious experts, and hence Pope Francis's co-nomination. He also is the lead editor for the textbook Introduction to Kinesiology, which is in its 4th edition. It's the most widely used textbook for introductory kinesiology classes. And I overheard him talking to one of the contributors that asking her to get ready for the 5th edition that we're going to be preparing soon. In 2008, this is still after his retirement, Cheryl became the Charter Executive Director for the American Kinesiology Association, a group of an association that was co-put together by the Academy. Jerry Thomas, who's here in the audience today, the first president, said this about Cheryl, why he was selected. He said, Cheryl was selected for this post because of his understanding of the total field of kinesiology, its history and areas of specialization, but most importantly, his enthusiasm for the opportunity. As executive director, I guess he exercised some too, of the fledgling organization, Cheryl coordinated and managed virtually all of the initiatives related to AKA's mission of unifying, supporting, and promoting the field of kinesiology. In 2011, he gave up the post of executive director, who she is here tonight, to become head of the editorial committee for the AKA. So, in a nutshell, Cheryl has made many important contributions at many levels to the field over an extended period of time. We just covered 54 years pretty quickly. The overall impact of these contributions have made the field of kinesiology more cohesive and have strengthened it. All of us are benefited by this, and it is important for us to recognize those who brought us our due recognition. So we recommend Cheryl Hoffman for this award.
Kathy Ennis, Joe Starnes, thank you for that introduction. Members of the Academy, guests, I know you're wondering how long is this guy going to speak. And I want you to know I'm mindful of the professor who was going through his student evaluation forms, and he found one that said, "Professor, if I only have an hour to live, I want it to be in your class because it seems like an eternity." I suppose it's only natural that an occasion such as this moves one to be reflective, and for that I have to beg your indulgence. I grew up in a small town in western Pennsylvania where I played high school sports from mid-August to mid-May. I was an unremarkable student. I was more interested in athletic achievement than academic achievement. In fact, I don't even remember giving a lot of thought to what I wanted to do with my life, so long as it had something to do with sports. I thought a high school basketball coach job would be fantastic. In 1958, as a sophomore physical education major at a small Christian college north of New York City, I miraculously discovered the joy of learning. What caused this spark to ignite? I couldn't say, other than to point to encouragement from a professor by the name of Dagmar Peterson. Peterson embodied, in fact constituted, the entire physical education department. I can't tell you specifically what she did, but I can tell you that whatever magic she applied, she made me want to learn. At the end of my senior year, I received a phone call from a Dr. Hood who told me that, quote, they had decided in my favor, unquote. Poor man, I had to ask him who he was and why he was calling me. As it turned out, he was the assistant superintendent of the White Plains Public Schools, where I had interviewed for a job a few weeks earlier, and I had so thoroughly dismissed the possibility they would even consider hiring me that I had forgotten his name. A year later, and seemingly out of the blue, the athletic director and basketball coach at Westchester Community College asked me to serve as his part-time assistant. 2 years later, at age 25, I was appointed head coach of the team. It seemed my dream job had come true far earlier than I had ever imagined. But ultimately, coaching didn't quite do it for me. It was great fun, it was challenging, but it took only 2 years for me to acknowledge that I missed the excitement, dare I say the thrill, of academic study. I suspect that most of you know what I'm talking about, that indescribable love for intellectual challenge, discovery, and self-testing. I miss the academic culture. If anyone should be blamed, I suppose it should be Larry Locke, my early mentor at Teachers College, Columbia, who took whatever magic Dagmar Peterson had worked in my undergraduate years and elevated it to the next level. So I made for me what was a momentous decision. I would abandon coaching and pursue an academic career. Bad decision, said the athletic director at the school. You'll live to regret it. I loved the man, but boy was he wrong. My 5 decades immersed in the discipline of kinesiology, encircled by a fascinating collection of scholars who study and teach it, have been rich beyond my wildest dreams. I've remained a student, and my scholar friends, through their lectures, their books, and their papers, have been my constant teachers. I've also been blessed with an extraordinarily good life beyond academia. It's been filled with good friends and acquaintances, many of them in this room tonight. Chief among them, of course, is my love of my life and my best friend. I'm going to pull a John Boehner on here. The remarkable woman that married me 20 years ago, Claude Moreau. Claude is a retired professor of French who has always endured my quirky work habits and dinner table lectures about things kinesiological with a smile. Although now and then I catch her rolling her eyes. I had asked Claude, in discussing this presentation, how she thought I should approach it, and she said, well, don't be smart, don't be witty, don't be charming, don't be intellectual, just be yourself. And just when you think life can't get any better, along comes an award like this. I'm truly honored, humbled, and undeserving. Thanks to those of you who have made my academic journey such a treat. One of the prime requirements of a Hetherington is that the recipient be emeritus, formally retired from the university or college position. It's a fitting requirement in that it's intended to honor an entire career, but when you think about it, the word emeritus is tainted with an ominous air of finality. It is the past participle of emerere, which means to serve out, to complete one's service. In the 17th century, it referred to veteran soldiers who had served their time or were literally finished their work. Completed their service, finished their work. I'm not so sure about that. Looking back on a half century of work has its rewards, but it also can be a humbling experience when we realize just how unfinished our work really is. So many aspirations left unrealized, so many designs left on the professional drawing board. Finished our work. I suspect that many Emeritus Academy members who have managed to keep a finger or two in the professional pie might say, not so fast. We may no longer have to attend faculty meetings or contend with honorary students or colleagues or complain about erratic heating and air conditioning systems. We may no longer receive regular paychecks or memos from the dean, but a good many of us have steadfastly heeded the pleadings of the poet Dylan Thomas. We have refused to go gently into the night. Quite simply, many who are emeriti feel as I do, that we still have a lot of unfinished business to take care of. Certainly Earl Ziegler, who served as president of this august body in 1981 and received the Hetherington Award 26 years ago, doesn't consider his business finished. After 70 years in the profession, at age 95, he continues to pump out books and pamphlets and pepper his colleagues with emails concerning the health of the field. So I would remind those already emeritized or those facing emeritization, actually that includes all of you sooner or later, and it will come sooner. That separation from your institution doesn't mean your work is finished. Retirement needn't stifle intellectual curiosity. The itch that causes you to ask and seek answers to questions when you're in mid-career will still require scratching after you've broken your formal bonds with your university. In fact, you may find, as I did, that ideas and agendas and opportunities that institutional obligations once made difficult to explore will now be allowed to take center stage. Who knows? Perhaps your best work lies ahead. At the risk of unfairly forcing an analogy, I would argue that our field of kinesiology also faces some unfinished business. In an era when our departments are experiencing unprecedented enrollments, when the word kinesiology seems to crop up with increasing frequency in the media, when members of the Academy are quoted in mainline newspapers and journals, it's tempting to conclude that the discipline has finally arrived, that the business of monitoring, bolstering, nurturing, nudging, even reconceptualizing our field is finished. I don't think it is. Like some of you, I was fortunate to have launched my career in the early 60s and practice in an era George Sage has called the most significant decades in the development of kinesiology as a recognized discipline. In a very short time period, those of us who signed on to what had been a narrow mission of preparing teachers and coaches came to realize that the horizons of our field actually stretch far beyond what we had imagined. A constellation of events kick-started the transformation. There was the dismal performance of American kids relative to their European counterparts on the Krauss-Weber test. That focused national attention on fitness and physical activity. Shortly thereafter, we were confronted with Franklin Henry's audacious claim that what we had embraced as a profession could actually be an academic discipline. We witnessed firsthand the impact of Sputnik on science curricula and saw how it intensified interest in the scientific underpinnings of our field. We responded to former Harvard President James Bryan Conant's plight in the education of American teachers that physical education shouldn't be a graduate level course by expanding our graduate offerings and planning PhD programs in a dizzying array of fields. It was a fantastic period. We took seriously our responsibilities as stewards of a young discipline. We redefined our field of study, reorganized curriculum, we designed sub-disciplines. We demolished long-standing barriers between men's and women's departments and engineered the founding of most of our specialized academic organizations. We oversaw a remarkable flourishing of research about physical activity. We lobbied deans and provosts. We knew the path to something even close to what Henry had envisioned wouldn't be easy. So we took the time to contemplate seriously what it meant for the field to be conceived as a discipline. We staked out our intellectual territories and agreed and disagreed on the pages of Quest. What is a discipline? If physical education is a discipline, how should it be conceptualized? What should be its focus? Should it be movement, exercise, sport? Should it be physical activity? What difference does it make? How might we mold disparate parts of the field into what we, with a straight face, could call a unified discipline? And what should we call it? We started with the art and science of human movement and soon decided that art was somebody else's concern and that movement was far too broad a concept around which to craft a discipline. We debated at length and frequently with some heat the question of whether our field should be organized as a discipline or a profession, and grudgingly came to appreciate the distinctive academic cultures underlying each. It's an important question that we have stopped asking, but the issue is just as alive in departments today as it was in the 70s. It was hard work and great fun, but we made mistakes. I believe our notion that the new discipline should be defined by sub-disciplines was ill-founded. And as a result, the initial dream of a fully integrated discipline never came about. We were all having so much fun supporting and extending our specialized fields that we rarely stepped back to look at the big picture. Once the new discipline began to roll, we ignored suggestions from Scott Kretschmar and Larry Locke and Darrell Siedentop and Carl Newell and Hal Lawson and others that we should do a better job of minding the store. To put it in inimitable Lawsonian terms, our subdisciplinary tribes forgot that we must actively steward the whole in tandem with our respective subdisciplinary parts. There's a lot of unfinished business. For example, confusion still reigns over the label kinesiology. While most departments with doctoral programs have adopted the term at least as a partial label, many still don't. Those who attended this event 3 years ago to hear Hetherington awardee Tip Tipton's presentation, we'll realize that some have never stopped earnestly believing that physical education is the label that should be applied. A doctoral program in my home state still calls itself the Department of Exercise and Sports Science, a label I favored until Carl Null showed me the light. Does it make any difference? Is exercise and sports science interchangeable with kinesiology? You may think so. I don't. With apologies to Shakespeare, a kinesiology by any other name would not be as sweet. Anyone can be forgiven for being confused about this. Search for kinesiology on the internet and you're likely to run into a number of different kinesiologies, including dental kinesiology and spiritual kinesiology. A few years ago, a chiropractic-related muscle testing practice called applied kinesiology attempted unsuccessfully to copyright the label kinesiology. They did succeed in copyrighting the label applied kinesiology. Want to know what kinesiology is? Consult the Oxford English Dictionary. Defines it as the field of study concerned with the mechanics of human bodily movement. Or Webster's New World College Dictionary that notes that kinesiology involves the evaluation and treatment of muscular imbalance or derangement. Doesn't it seem that after 50 years, if the major lexicographers still don't know how to accurately define our field, we have a lot of unfinished business to do? Another piece of unfinished business is to reach agreement on the standard core of knowledge that lies at the heart of kinesiology. At present, and judging from the variety of curricula offered under its name, kinesiology has a multitude of faces, pretty much what a department decides it is. Perhaps older, more mature disciplines can get away with such ambiguities. I don't think a field like kinesiology that's still in its formative stage can. In saying this, I applaud the American Kinesiology Association's effort to draft a core of knowledge and competencies. In fact, I was involved early in the process. But I honestly wonder if the association's decision to leave the interpretation of the core components up to individual departments and not to back up their recommendation with a plan for political enforcement, aka accreditation, will have any effect in clarifying exactly what body of knowledge a kinesiologist should possess. Like others who have written before me, I worry about the splintering of our field into sub-disciplines. No doubt this has been a boon to the research enterprise. On the other hand, it's risked blurring the disciplinary boundaries of our field. How so? Well, consider a sports sociologist with training in kinesiology who conducts cross-disciplinary research with a sociologist. What is the added value a sports sociologist from a kinesiology department brings to the project? Is there a kinesiological sociology that's somehow different from traditional sociology? In a similar vein, what boundary separates biomechanics offered in a kinesiology department from biomechanics proper? The disciplinary boundaries of kinesiology, if they exist at all, are in desperate need of clarification. I sometimes wonder if we haven't advanced the discipline, quad-discipline, all that far from where we were in the 70s. From where I've been watching, kinesiology seems a little more than the sum of an assortment of sub-disciplines, and I'm struggling to find a unifying thread. So gripped are we by sub-discipline fever that we've identified not as kinesiologists, but as sport historians, sport psychologists, motor development specialists, or some other IST tag on to traditional disciplines, which I'm left to presume we consider more prestigious. It's hard not to wonder if our failure to self-identify with our discipline points to some serious cracks in our superstructure. Like you, I often resort to the term sub-discipline to define our field, but it's always perplexed me. By definition, a sub-discipline is subject to some larger discipline. We tend to assume the larger discipline to which our areas of specialization are sub is kinesiology, but not really. Isn't our very use of the term parent disciplines an admission that each of our subdisciplines are offspring not of kinesiological parents, but some other parents, the traditional disciplines. Sometimes I wonder if we have the ammunition to back up our claims that kinesiology is indeed a discipline. A discipline has unique theories, models, and methods. But I struggle to name a kinesiological theory, a kinesiological model, or a kinesiological method. All seem derived, maybe shanghaied, with apologies to our guest, shanghaied is a better word for it, from traditional disciplines. What, I wonder, would an authentic subdiscipline of kinesiology look like? I think when we're able to answer that question, we'll be able to move closer to an understanding of what an authentic discipline of kinesiology is like. Time doesn't permit me to explore in depth some other pieces of unfinished business. I might ask whether a discipline has a long-term future, when it's come to depend on a massive influx of students who have only marginal interest in kinesiology and whose career aspirations are for another field. I could point to our reluctance to flex our political muscles to ensure a monopoly on preparing fitness leaders and personal trainers. Next week, Washington, D.C. City Council will take a historical vote on new standards and regulations governing personal trainers. If the city has asked the Board of Physical Therapy and not any of our organizations to develop the regulations, might tell us more than we care to know about our political strength. We need to remember, academic strength and political strength draw their waters from different wells. Lest I impress you as being hopelessly jaded about the future of kinesiology, let me assure you that I'm not. In fact, I'm genuinely optimistic, but it's a cautious optimism. The future of any discipline is never assured. Young ones like ours are especially vulnerable to the whims of social preference, administrative mindsets, market conditions, and political winds that blow both inside and outside the university. Only the naive professor would imagine that his or her chosen field of study is impervious to such forces and that he or she can turn a blind eye to developments that sooner or later might impact the vitality of their academic field. Defense, some says, is a good offense. Not so on the academic battlefield, where waiting to react to outside forces virtually assures that you'll be too late to protect your flanks. As I say this, our colleagues in the humanities, entrenched in the university far longer than we have, are hustling to preserve their doctoral programs. Professors of French are confronting substantial declines, unimaginable even 15 years ago. I suspect 20 years ago it would have been hard to convince librarians that library science would fall on hard times. The air of certainty clouding not just our field, but the entire higher education enterprise is a constant reminder that our business isn't finished. In closing, I would remind you that stewardship, vitalizing and revitalizing the discipline, is our social, dare I say, our moral obligation. Kinesiology is our collective intellectual offspring. It demands and deserves our fierce commitment. Kinesiology is still young, and like a child, it requires parenting. And like good parents, we need to do it wisely and with a great deal of tender, loving care. Thank you.